The first time the galaxy realized that humanity was different was not during their victories, but in the moments when they should have been utterly broken. On the mining moon of Kralos, when the Vasher chained human prisoners in damp stone cells, the other captured species fell silent, eyes dulled with despair. Yet the humans filled the corridors with laughter. They sang songs off-key, clapping chains together to keep rhythm. One man, his ribs broken, told jokes so ridiculous that even a guard with scales like armor paused to listen before snarling away in confusion. A woman, bruised and bleeding, whispered encouragements to strangers of other races, telling them stories of Earth's darkest winters, when people survived with nothing but firelight and stubbornness. The aliens didn't understand. No one laughed in prison. No one smiled while waiting for death. And yet, the humans did. On the front lines, the same pattern unfolded. Their ships were patchworks of welded plates, conduits sealed with little more than human ingenuity and desperation. By all logic, they should have fallen apart long before they reached the battlefield. Yet there they were, flying half-broken hulks with names painted in bold letters across the hulls. Never surrender, still kicking, last laugh. Crews who had seen comrades incinerated hours earlier joked about duct tape being the galaxy's greatest technology. They were not fearless, not immune to pain or grief, but they carried it differently. Where other species drown under loss, humans turned it into fuel, burning it bright enough to light the path forward. Even their enemies began to notice. A Vasher commander once struck a human prisoner across the face to silence her mocking words. She only spat blood and grinned wider, as though pain was another challenge to embrace rather than avoid. The commander walked away unsettled, his claws trembling, muttering to himself that no creature should find strength in suffering. For the Vasher, victory was about dominance, breaking the will of enemies until nothing remained. But humans refused a break. Among allies, this defiance spread like a contagion. In the mess halls of Concord fleets, alien soldiers sat stiffly at first, staring in shock as humans raised glasses to the dead with laughter and stories rather than silence. Over time, they began to join in. A crystalline Threx once admitted, with a voice like shattered glass, that they never understood grief until humans showed them that it could coexist with joy. What humans carried wasn't denial, it was defiance, the ability to look at despair and smile anyway. When the great battle at Velrose came, and the Vasher unveiled their planet-killing Sunspear, every fleet in the Concord knew fear. Ships wavered, morale fractured, retreat seemed inevitable. But then across the network came the rough, unpolished voice of a human commander whose ship barely held together. He reminded them that humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that nearly burned their homeworld to ash. He told them the galaxy's mistake was assuming strength came from weapons or flesh, when in truth it came from the refusal to stop moving forward. His words were not elegant, but they carried weight. Even alien crews who barely understood human idioms felt their spirits ignite. When the Sunspear fired, it was humans who threw crippled ships into its path, crews laughing as they defied certain death. Other fleets followed their example, not out of orders, but out of something new, something the humans had awakened in them. And when the Vasher finally broke, fleeing from a battle they should have won, the galaxy understood what had happened. Humanity had changed the very rules of war, not by superior firepower, but by demonstrating a power no one else possessed. After the war, scholars tried to define it. Some called it resilience, others stubbornness, others still an evolutionary accident born from surviving on a dangerous world. But among the countless names and theories, one truth remained clear. Humans had given the galaxy a gift it had never known it needed. They showed that laughter could be sharper than blades, that hope could be stronger than armor, and that even in the darkest void, a spark of defiance could light the way. It was then that the galaxy realized humanity's most unexpected superpower was not physical, not technological, not even intellectual. It was a simple, impossible ability to hope, and to carry others with them into that light, no matter how deep the darkness seemed. The aftermath of the war was unlike anything the galaxy had ever experienced. Entire planets lay in ruins. Fleets drifted broken in the void, and civilizations had been tested to the brink of extinction. Yet, amidst the wreckage, humans moved differently from everyone else. While other species lingered in despair, Weighing losses and tallying grief, humans built. On shattered moons, they cleared rubble with their own hands, singing as they worked. On scorched cities, they planted gardens amid craters, laughing as seedlings pushed through the ash. Their resilience was no longer a weapon of war. It had become a beacon of reconstruction. Alien allies watched in awe. The Ikari, once bound by rigid caste structures, began questioning their traditions after seeing humans embrace every individual's choice, even in survival. The Madar, who had prided themselves on centuries of philosophical detachment, started organizing assemblies where anyone could speak, inspired by human debates that had once seemed chaotic but were filled with purpose. Even the HFY, a species whose silence had been revered, now hummed in gentle harmonies alongside human songs, filling alien cities with new soundscapes. In every corner of the galaxy, small acts of human-inspired hope spread. Children who had grown up under tyrannical regimes whispered names instead of numbers, daring to claim their identities. Workers who had toiled under harsh overlords began teaching their peers without permission, experimenting, inventing, laughing in the face of rules that once dictated silence. The galaxy's leaders were stunned. Power was no longer enforced by decrees or fleets. It had begun to flow from the courage and creativity of ordinary people. Yet shadows lingered. The remnants of the Vasher, Zarth, and Tovari elders still plotted, hiding in the dark corners of space. They feared the unstoppable force humanity had unleashed, not their weapons, but their spirit. Secret fleets were constructed. Spies infiltrated human colonies, and whispers of revenge moved faster than starships. But every time they attempted to strike, they found themselves confronted not by armies alone, but by communities of aliens and humans who refused to bow. Farms, workshops, schools, and colonies became fortresses of unity. Defiance had evolved into a living network, and the galaxy's smallest act of hope became its strongest shield. On Earth, humans did not claim victory or dominance. They refused to become conquerors, despite having proven themselves capable of surviving against impossible odds. Ambassador Juno addressed the galaxy through a hollow transmission, her words simple but resonant. "We are not rulers. We are mirrors. We reflect what is possible when courage and hope outweigh fear and despair. You can choose to see the light, or you can cling to darkness, but we will continue, as we always have." Her message spread like wildfire across alien worlds. Species began collaborating in ways that had once been unthinkable. Warships became transport vessels carrying food and medicine. Artisans shared designs freely across star systems. Children from different species played and learned together, unafraid of differences, inspired by the humans who had first shown that survival could coexist with joy. The galaxy slowly shifted. Old empires began to crumble, not through force, but through the awakening of the individuals they had tried to control. Leaders who once ruled with fear found themselves powerless against citizens who had tasted freedom, laughter, and hope. It was not the humans who toppled them, but the human example, the unstoppable superpower of resilience and optimism that spread through every heart willing to embrace it. Even the darkest corners began to change. A single human story of a child saving a wounded alien companion despite fear of punishment circulated across systems, inspiring others to act with compassion and courage. Small gestures became movements. Shared songs became traditions. Across the galaxy, the unthinkable became possible, and the impossible began to feel inevitable. Humans had not conquered through might, nor had they imposed their will. They had survived, endured, and inspired. And in doing so, they had revealed a power that no weapon, no empire, and no calculation could ever measure. It was a power written not in fleets or armor, but in laughter, hope, and the unyielding refusal to surrender. The galaxy had faced extinction, despair, and tyranny, and in humanity, it found a mirror reflecting what it could become. No one could predict the next century. Challenges would arise, wars would spark, and darkness would return. Yet one truth had been set in stone. Wherever humans went, life did not merely endure, it thrived. And any who underestimated that, any who believed strength existed only in claws, fleets, or psychic power, would soon learn the galaxy's most unexpected truth. Humans' superpower was not strength. It was hope, and hope, once ignited, could never be extinguished. The years that followed were quieter in the sense that open warfare had ceased, but the galaxy was far from peaceful. Humanity's influence had spread not through conquest, but through example, and that created tensions of a subtler, more insidious kind. The old empires still lingered, plotting in shadows, reluctant to accept that strength could exist without domination. Yet their attempts to destabilize colonies only revealed the depth of what humans had awakened. Planets, moons, and outposts once subdued by fear now thrive with independent communities. Humans had taught, often without speaking the lesson directly, that survival was not about submission. It was about endurance, collaboration, and courage. On the distant world of Lareth Prime, a young alien engineer named Rilke marveled at a human-inspired project. The city's infrastructure had been rebuilt after a devastating orbital bombardment. But what fascinated her wasn't the technology. It was the way humans had insisted that children, workers, and even elderly citizens participate. The buildings bore the marks of everyone who had touched them, imperfection celebrated rather than erased. They build together, Rilke told her mentor, and somehow it works. Somehow it holds. Meanwhile, former Vasher territories became laboratories of cultural revolution. Citizens who had grown up under tyranny experimented with democracy, art, and even humor. Inspired by human resilience, they began documenting their histories differently, telling stories not of oppression, but of endurance. Children learned to sing and laugh in ways their ancestors had been forbidden to, and for the first time, entire species began redefining what it meant to be alive in a galaxy. Humans themselves did not seek credit or dominion. They were explorers, engineers, teachers, farmers, soldiers, and dreamers. Ambassador Juno often walked through alien colonies, sharing knowledge of crops that could grow in barren soil, teaching medical techniques, or simply listening. Where humans had once been underestimated as fragile, now they were sought for guidance, less for their strength, more for their understanding of what it meant to keep going when all odds were stacked against them. It wasn't just survival that made humanity extraordinary. It was their ability to inspire others to survive alongside them. Entire fleets once feared for their obedience to tyrannical leaders began adopting human practices of problem-solving and improvisation. Small victories over logistical challenges, creative solutions in disaster zones, and a willingness to laugh amid tragedy became contagious. Even alien species renowned for rigidity discovered flexibility, not through coercion but through watching humans endure. Yet, challenges persisted. Rogue factions of the old empires occasionally tested the limits of tolerance and patience. A Tovari warlord attempted to seize a critical trade hub. A Zarth queen tried to enforce compliance in her hive against those inspired by human ideals. Each time, however, ordinary citizens, aliens and humans alike, rose up, organizing defenses, negotiating solutions, and sometimes disarming threats without firing a single shot. The galaxy was learning that power didn't always belong to the strongest fleets or deadliest weapons. It could belong to those who refused to bow, who endured, and who inspired others to endure with them. Across worlds, humans' most unexpected superpower, the ability to endure, to inspire hope, to laugh in the face of despair, continued to ripple outward. Children of multiple species played together in schools built from rubble. Engineers collaborated across species lines, and communities once separated by fear now shared knowledge, laughter, and culture. Each small act reinforced a lesson humans had always embodied. Strength was not merely survival or conquest, but the unyielding refusal to surrender to darkness. And somewhere, in the quiet moments between rebuilding and exploration, humans reflected on what they had done. They did not see themselves as saviors. They were not rulers. They were mirrors, showing the galaxy what could be accomplished when hope and resilience were allowed to flourish. The galaxy, in turn, changed, not because of domination, but because of inspiration. The true legacy of humanity's superpower was subtle yet unstoppable. Ordinary beings, empowered by example, creating extraordinary worlds. Entire civilizations could now endure crises without collapsing. Communities rebuilt themselves with creativity and laughter. Even the most cynical alien leaders found themselves reluctantly adapting, realizing that humans had unlocked a force far older and more powerful than any weapon. The irrepressible spirit of life, unbroken, unbowed, and unafraid. And in the vastness of space, as stars blinked and worlds turned, the galaxy learned an enduring truth. Human strength had never been in their weapons, their speed, or their intellect. It was in their refusal to be defeated, their ability to carry others with them through darkness, and their unwavering hope that even in the direst circumstances, life could prevail. Wherever humans went, resilience followed. Wherever humans stayed, hope took root. And wherever hope flourished, the impossible became inevitable. The galaxy would never forget the lesson, and it would never be the same again. The centuries that followed solidified humanity's legacy in ways no one could have predicted. The galaxy, once fractured by fear, hierarchy, and endless wars, began to weave itself into something entirely new. Formerly subjugated worlds now thrived as independent entities, guided less by edict and more by collaboration. Alien civilizations that had once prided themselves on order and dominance discovered a new kind of strength in choice, creativity, and resilience, values that humans had demonstrated through every hardship, every laugh, every act of endurance. On the rebuilt planet of Velrose, children of multiple species ran through streets that had been flattened by war. They painted murals together, depicting humans alongside alien heroes, each figure drawn not with reverence, but with admiration for courage and perseverance. Citizens young and old worked side by side to restore gardens, marketplaces, and schools. For the first time in millennia, the world felt alive not because of order imposed from above, but because of life freely expressed. In the orbital colonies, engineers and scholars collaborated across species lines, sharing technology, culture, and art. They built ships capable of exploring uncharted sectors, medical facilities that combined alien biology with human ingenuity, and communication networks that allowed diverse worlds to exchange ideas instantaneously. Every innovation carried a trace of humanity, not in ownership, but in philosophy. Create, endure, share, inspire. Even species with long histories of rigid hierarchy began to reorganize themselves, favoring councils and assemblies where voices mattered more than rank. The old empires that had once ruled through fear were either gone or forced to adapt. Vasher warlords, Zarth queens, and Tovari elders discovered that threats no longer intimidated populations. Resilience and unity did. Attempts to reclaim dominance failed not because of superior weapons, but because communities had learned the human lesson. Survival was not enough. To endure fully, one must persevere with courage, inspire others, and maintain hope even in the shadow of despair. Humanity did not seek titles, dominion, or tribute. They were explorers, teachers, healers, and builders. They moved from planet to planet, sharing knowledge, mending wounds both literal and cultural, and demonstrating that strength could manifest as compassion and courage, not just firepower. Their greatest victories were often invisible to those who measured power in fleets or armies. A child teaching another species to read, a community rebuilding a devastated city together, a scientist from two different planets discovering a cure because they dare to trust each other. In the grand archives of the galaxy, historians later recorded this era as a time of endurance. They documented battles and treaties, technological breakthroughs, and political realignments. But the chapters devoted to humanity were different. They did not focus on victories or losses, nor on strategy or weaponry. They focus on laughter in the face of disaster, hope in hard despair, and the extraordinary power of ordinary beings refusing to give up. Even remnants of the old empires could not ignore the transformation. Some defected, inspired by the humans' example, joining communities they had once sought to control. Others resisted, only to find that fear and oppression were no longer sufficient to bend populations to their will. Across the galaxy, a quiet revolution unfolded. Not through conquest, but through example. Every act of perseverance sparked another. Every gesture of courage inspired countless others. Humanity's most unexpected superpower, the ability to endure, inspire, and hope, became a new universal constant. It was visible in the way alien societies adapted, in the laughter of children on previously war-torn worlds, in the cooperation of engineers across galaxies, and in the cultural rebirth of entire civilizations. Where once the galaxy had calculated power in fleets, weapons, and dominance, it now measured in spirit, resilience, and a capacity to uplift others. And through it all, humans remained humble. They did not declare themselves rulers or gods. They simply moved forward, as they always had, carrying others with them through darkness, teaching the galaxy a lesson no weapon ever could. That true strength lies not in might, but in the unbreakable will survive, to build, to hope, and to inspire. In every corner of the cosmos, from shattered moons to thriving megacities, from quiet forests to bustling orbital hubs, the legacy of humanity's superpower endured. The galaxy had faced annihilation, tyranny, and despair, but it also witnessed something far greater, a force that could not be contained or destroyed. Humans had taught the universe that even in the bleakest moments, life would flourish, that laughter could pierce the shadow of death, and that hope, once ignited, could never be extinguished. The galaxy would never forget. Humanity's most unexpected superpower had changed everything, and the universe, vast and ancient, had learned that the impossible could be made real, not with weapons, but with courage, resilience, and an unwavering belief that life was worth fighting for, no matter the odds.